Okay. Very well then. So, Saskia, can you see the page I just posted?
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Are you copying the questions?
yes.
Right. So go ahead. Don't worry. When you finish, just tell me, right? So that we can start talking.
Okay.
Is your mind working already, Haisa? On the questions, I mean?
Yeah, I'm still reflecting.
Right. Is anything distracting you, Haisa?
Yeah, my cat is here. Yeah, he had surgery last week,
Oh,
and he's sometimes licking the stitches.
I see. Probably it's because it's recovering. Is it a female cat or a male cat?
It's a male cat.
Oh, right.
It was a stray cat,
Uh-huh.
and since I adopted him and he lived on the streets, I had to take him to the vet to do many exams to know if he had any problems, and I
Uh-huh.
found many problems. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
natural.
now I have to take care of him.
Sure. You took up the responsibility, so
Yeah.
Saskia.
I'm on letter D already, about to finish.
Right.
Okay, all done.
That's good. I'll disappear, okay, from the screen a little because I'll be reading the questions, but
Okay.
I can hear you. I just can't read anything on the chat, okay? So
Oh, okay.
if you wanna interfere, you need to use the microphone, right? Very well. So I can see you. The the first question: what's the most frequently used material? Well, our session these 2 Saturdays is about designing and evaluating materials, right? And we have a very wide universe of materials today because of our technologies, right? In the past, teachers used to have some trouble finding or designing material. You know, you had to use paper, crayon, a pen,
Yes.
pencil, yeah, many utensils, right? Many tools, hand tools to prepare material. But with the advent of the computer, that sped up very fast, right? And it brought a wide variety of possibilities. Even today, what we have now, we may not have tomorrow anymore. We may have something better. Okay.
Sure. Hopefully.
But yeah, hopefully, yeah. And that helped us a lot because of this context we're living today, right? But some of the, let's say, traditional way of designing and analyzing material is still valid, right? To give you an example, the textbook. We are still using a textbook, right? A print textbook. We'll be discussing a little about that in our next Saturday session. But as I said, some of the traditional questions, okay, and discussions still prevail today, okay? So, first question.
I think, in my opinion, I think the most used material is still the textbook and workbook. But like when you teach little kids, we
Uh-huh.
use a lot of flashcards because
Mm-hmm.
that's how they can interact with what
Mm-hmm.
we have. So the textbook is not so important in these cases, but
Mm-hmm.
in general, I guess we still use the textbook
The
as
most.
like
The most frequently.
the most frequently, yes.
You agree, Haisa?
I wrote here three materials that, in my opinion, are frequently used. The first one, in my opinion, is a test book. I think
Mm-hmm.
this is the main material for many schools.
Mm-hmm.
It's the textbook.
Mm-hmm.
It's very traditional too, very traditional.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote here the PowerPoint presentations, and I also wrote here apps to learn English. Yeah. Now with this new generation, this
Mm-hmm.
generation that they are born with cell phones on their hands, they love apps.
Right.
They love using the cell phone for everything. So I
Mm-hmm.
think three main uses: books, PowerPoint, and apps.
In this sequence,
Yeah,
from the most to the least, in this case.
I guess so. I don't know. I think it depends. It depends on the school, and it also depends on the student.
I see. Yeah, you have gone into the letter B a little already, right? But what if I tell you that you are wrong?
Fine.
Well, but if I tell you you are wrong, that means you need to find a different alternative. Well, of course, I'm not saying that you are wrong, but statistics still prove that this is not the correct response to that first question. Remember what I told you? The traditional way is still on,
Yeah.
okay? Although we have a lot of other resources, um, but one of the things that teachers um, usually confuse is the definition between material and resource, right?
Hmm.
So we have to have this difference in our mind. The physical, for example, you said PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So the equipment is the resource.
Yeah.
What you project is the material you designed. So in other words, you are not using the PowerPoint as material. You're using flashcards, okay?
Now I understand. It's only
Um,
the wording. The
yeah,
wording is not
correct.
correct. So
Yeah,
if I said that instead of PowerPoint, teacher creates materials and shows them using PowerPoint. So this
correct.
is the
The
correct
PowerPoint,
wording.
yeah, the PowerPoint is the resource you have,
Yeah.
right? And what you do with it, like if you prepare flashcards, if you prepare like
Mm-hmm.
diagrams, if you prepare whatever, then
Uh-huh.
what you project is the material, right?
Okay, okay. Is the
Yeah,
app the material or the app is the resource?
exactly. The resource.
Really?
Yeah,
But
your cell phone and the apps are resources. What you show or what you find or what you do with the app is your material. For
Even
example,
though when the app is meant to teach you English from beginner to advanced, they
yeah,
are a resource.
yes, it is. It's like the projector of the PowerPoint. What you have, for example, you have some apps to teach you pronunciation, correct?
Uh-huh.
How do they do it?
They ask you to repeat, to listen, to maybe spell the word.
Uh-huh. So,
So
what's your material?
the app.
The audio, the audio, the
Ah,
voice,
okay,
the
okay,
model that you're using in the app is your material.
okay. So
Okay,
if I say the
this is
app,
more like uh,
when I say the app, it's actually the material that the app uses, and
uh-huh,
the platform is my resource.
correct, correct. That's correct. For example, um, when you talk about text writing, you
Mm-hmm.
have different physical platforms for your text. You can write on paper, for
Uh-huh.
example. You can record. You
Mm-hmm.
can project. You can write on an electronic platform or an app, if you prefer to say. But this is not the material. This is the channel you're
Mm-hmm.
using, okay, to design your material.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sorry. Alana said that she's trying, she's asking to participate
she's
in
asking to
the,
participate.
yes.
Let me see. Wait a minute. Uh-uh. No, there's no request.
Será que
Tell
ela
her
tá
to,
usando o link certo?
yeah, you need to tell her to go to the platform and click on the first week
Just a second. I'm going to send her
because I have no
the link.
request here. No. Alana usually has problems with the internet because she lives in the countryside. So, well, anyway, let's continue then. So, as I was telling you, right? We have to make this distinction between what is a resource and what is a material. Of course, sometimes if you say that the PowerPoint, for example, the the app is a material, everybody understands what you mean, right? But the word is not exactly correct, okay? As you will see when I tell you the answer from these statistics for letter A, you will see that this is usually interchangeable. So don't worry, Harissa. If you say that the PowerPoint is material, the app is material, because this is how people see it, okay? So there's no problem there, right? So that's what I tried to say when I said your answer was wrong, okay? But it's not wrong in the aspect of being incorrect, okay? Because people usually um, use um, the word interchangeably, right?
Okay.
According to statistics, the most frequently used material in a class is still the board, okay? And if it's a blackboard, okay, If it's a physical board, you have one behavior. If it's an electronic, or what people say a magical board, you have a different behavior, right? Of course, if it's a magical board or if it's a magnet board, everything is more advanced. Let's put it like this. It's easier, right? Or it's faster. But in some universes, in some places, in some schools, there is no PowerPoint, there's no internet, there's no computer, there's no okay, she's coming now. Well, okay. Hi, Alana. Morning.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Morning.
All right. So as I was saying, in some schools, okay, in some schools, you don't have a computer. You don't have a PowerPoint projector. You have no technology, right? So in some countries, in some places, you have nothing of that. So that's why I told you that still today, the traditional way of teaching or using a class is still valid. So the statistics still show today that the most frequently used material is the board. Now, considering this point, let's talk a little bit about this board. Can you tell me one advantage of using the board?
When you use the board, you can write your own plan for the lesson. So you are not relying on what other teachers wrote in other countries, in other contexts. You are able to select and to do something like specific for your group or and their objectives and what they want.
Right. Another advantage.
I think it's a material that is not expensive. In most cases, you see that the board is very general when you visit countries. Of course, richer countries will have more, how can I say, more expensive boards, more technology, more resources to have a better board, and countries that are less rich will have simpler boards, but I think they are pretty general.
Okay. Very good. Of course, that boards have developed, right? In the very long past, we
Yes.
had a chalkboard, okay? So we needed to have chalk. And then we had all that powder, okay? Allergy, red eyes, running noses, and now we don't need this anymore, right?
Yeah.
I believe we don't even have chalk anymore. But as I told you, in some very distant places, right, you're still using the chalkboard, right? But anyway, good advantages. You can use the board to adapt your material, right? To adapt your writing, okay? One of the very big advantages of the board is that it's available easily in schools and classes. And it's may be the best material, the best resource for visual students. It's big, right? And all the students frequently, easily can see what you're writing or what you're putting on the board. Another advantage is that you don't only write on the board, you can also hang posters, right? Students can easily go there to the front of the class and use the board. So it's also good for kinesthetic activities for children, for example. Okay, so when you ask them to draw um, or write letters on the board, so you can use that for motor training as well. So the board is a very easy material to have. Very good. Disadvantages. One disadvantage, which is not exactly brought by the board. It can also be brought by the teacher himself or herself. So, one disadvantage.
I think one disadvantage of using the board and in most of our lessons is that it's very time demanding because we need to copy and we need to give students time to copy, and our lessons aren't usually long.
Right.
We have like an average
For,
of an hour to teach.
mhm,
So using the boards, they use up like 25 minutes. So
mhm,
I think for me the biggest disadvantage is that.
right.
And
It's time consuming to use the
yes, time
board.
consuming, yes.
Right. Any other opinions on the disadvantages?
I think for some students, using the board is boring
Boring.
because there's no interaction, because now they're used with a lot of technology, and using the board is very mainstream.
Mhm, correct. Okay. Um, the board is a fixed material. So as Raisa said, it's boring because you cannot have so much variety in a short time, as Saskia said. So, for example, to have color crayons or color markers or color chalk, to have some variety of colors on a board is very difficult, and it's money consuming too, because usually the teacher has to buy that material, or the school has to ask the students to have the material, but it's expensive, it's not so cheap. um, but one of the most difficult situations with the board is not exactly brought from the board, it's brought from the teacher. Can you think of anything in that direction? No? I
Mm,
mm,
is it selecting like I don't know, is it having bad choices, selecting what you put on the board or something like that?
yes, it's possible. It's one thing, but there is something worse. when it's a consequence of what you said, Saskia, because usually the teacher doesn't know exactly how much he should put on the board. So selecting what he needs to have on the board is hard for the teacher, especially when the class is on, right? So at the spur of the moment, when he needs to make a decision about what he needs to write or put on the board, is difficult. So an immediate consequence is the disorganization of the board. Most of us don't organize the board correctly. You know, like dividing the board in columns or little quadrants. So sometimes the teacher can't make a decision about dividing the board in 4 squares or
Yes.
6 squares or 8 squares. Then he starts writing in all the different corners of the board in different positions, and sometimes the students don't follow the direction the teacher is moving. And the reason for that is very simple. He can't keep erasing the board all the time to write other things. Because if he wipes out what he has already written, maybe the students will have problems to remember what was there. And sometimes he needs to make a relation between what is written on the left with what is written on the right and in the middle. So this crazy stress of writing on the board without erasing or organizing, the teacher usually believes that it will take a lot of time to organize the board. But that is a mistake, because the more organized your board is, the better the understanding of your students and following the sequence of what you're writing or putting on the board, right? Another disadvantage is pasting or sticking material to the board, right? You know that with the wooden board, right, for chalk, you need to have nails if you want to hang something on the board. Or you need to have Scotch tape, correct, to paste things on the board. If it's a white board, if it's a magnet board, you need to paste with the Scotch tape. And sometimes the tape the teacher has is not the correct tape to paste material on the board. And then when you finish your class, your board is full of glue, all marked, right? All cracked because of this incorrect use. So as all the other materials, right, there are advantages and disadvantages. So we need to be very careful when we are using the boards, okay? Because boards today, this magnet board is also very expensive, but it's still the best material to use. Imagine if you are using the PowerPoint projector, right? If you want to project something and you don't have the screen for the projection. You know, that moving thing that goes up and down? Not all schools have that because it's also expensive. So you need to make your projection on the board. Then, you know, adapting the movement of the projector, right, with the size of the board is not so easy. Okay, sometimes the board is small, sometimes it's bigger. You know, you have a lot of situations, right? If you want to use the board and another material together with it, right? And you need, because of what you write, because of what you draw, because of what you project. So one of the biggest disadvantages of the board is that you cannot use it alone. You always need to use the board and something else. And this something else can cause trouble. But the board is the material the teacher most frequently has.
Professor,
Yes.
falando aí nessa questão de vantagens e desvantagens do uso de alguns materiais, e alguns recursos, na verdade, é um grande desafio para a gente, né? Sempre, no caso aqui, dando exemplo entre mim e as meninas, porque as meninas têm todo um segmento a ser seguido na escola de idiomas, um material totalmente preparado para a questão das aulas, então tudo vai em consonância com o que eles querem para os alunos.
Certo.
É diferente da gente que está na escola pública, por exemplo, que às vezes, às vezes não, em maioria, quase 100%, a escolha do livro didático, vamos dizer, que é um dos recursos a se trabalhar em sala, né? Ele não vai em consonância com o conteúdo programático.
Uhum.
Ou é uma escolha de um livro que é totalmente inadequado para aquele público, para aquela série, né? Então, é uma questão de uma divergência em relação a essa escolha dos livros didáticos. Não é só na questão da língua inglesa, mas em quase todas as disciplinas. Mas no inglês isso ainda tende a ser muito pior.
Sim.
Mas, assim, às vezes a gente pega algumas escolas, eu vou falar um pouco mais para o meu lado, não sei, quem sabe um dia as meninas tenham essa experiência de quando está trabalhando no serviço público, a gente encontra a escola ainda que dá quadro a giz. Eu, particularmente, em pleno 2021, ainda, até 2019, tirando essa questão da pandemia, eu ainda consegui trabalhar numa escola onde o único recurso palpável era um quadro a giz. Então, assumindo várias turmas de séries diferentes, a gente tem um trabalho quase de Hércules, porque é um material diferenciado para cada um, procurar selecionar um material que atinja aqueles propósitos. Então, assim como é dificultoso para qualquer outra área, mas eles trabalham ainda no nosso idioma. Para a gente que é da língua estrangeira, é 3 vezes maior o nosso trabalho. Porque primeiro é um trabalho de selecionar o que a gente vai trabalhar, aquela questão de diagnóstico, o que é que o meu aluno conhece, sabe, levar em consideração aquela série de fatores.
Uhum.
E realmente o uso só do quadro, mesmo que você pegue uma escola onde tenha, por exemplo, da última escola que eu estou, que tem um suporte melhor, que tem uma estrutura melhor, se a gente não buscar fazer uma aula um pouco mais interativa e que abarque experiências novas para esse aluno, o quadro acaba se transformando até no pior instrumento para a gente, porque os alunos já estão muito cansados dessa questão de estar só piloto e quadro. Principalmente das aulas anteriores, aí quando eles pegam uma aula que pode vir com dinamismo a mais, se torna enfadonho para eles, né? Acaba se tornando uma coisa um pouco chata. Então, assim, a seleção de material, os recursos a utilizar, é um dos nossos maiores ganhos, quando a gente tem, né, esses recursos disponíveis na escola. Por exemplo, no meu caso, eu tenho o Data Show, que eu acabei comprando justamente para dar um suporte melhor, porque a escola dispõe de um. Aí o professor de ciências usa, o professor de geografia também, o professor de história, então virou aquela disputa. E aí acabava que todo mundo começava a coincidir os horários. Eu falei, não, eu preciso de um instrumento meu para as minhas aulas, para aquilo que eu possa melhorar em termos de prática. Então,
Sim.
assim, quando algumas coisas foram para a forma de animação, que a tecnologia pôde me proporcionar um ganho a mais, a aula modifica, eu acho que até mais de 50%, porque eu acabo indo para o quadro quando eu tenho que explicar alguma coisa de eixo gramatical que alguns alunos acabam não conseguindo compreender e não tem jeito, a gente precisa ir para o quadro para ilustrar até melhor e exemplificando. Então, o que eu estou querendo dizer? Que, infelizmente, a gente não consegue manter nem sempre o mesmo nível em todas as escolas que a gente está. Isso eu estou falando no meu caso de questão de experiências de escolas públicas, né? Tem uma diferente das meninas que estão no curso de idiomas, elas sabem dos recursos disponíveis que estão na mão delas. Né? Então, elas já não passam muito por esse tipo de dificuldade. Então, quando a gente encontra essas problemáticas no meio do caminho da gente, isso vai muito do professor, se ele vai querer melhorar a didática dele, o ensino dele, de qual forma, porque eu falo por alguns colegas de trabalho meu que isso não é problema nenhum, eles não querem nem saber. Vai do jeito que der, faz do jeito que dá, com o recurso que tiver. Então, assim, essa questão da disposição do material, ele vai mais 100% da vontade do próprio professor em melhorar as coisas dentro do ambiente da sala de aula.
Okay.
Um,
Yes, Sasha.
okay, I would like to comment on what Alana said. I totally agree with her that when we talk about like language schools, if the school doesn't provide good resources, the parents will not enroll their kids in the school. So they feel that they need to, I don't know, to be a little bit more willing to spend money on their resources. Like I in the language school where I work, all the boards are smart boards and all the classrooms have projectors. But I work in a regular school in the morning. It's a big school, but we don't have enough. We don't have enough projectors for all of the groups, all of the teachers. Like we have 2 projectors for the whole school, and the other projectors are what the teachers had to buy themselves. I had to buy one, so I had to buy my own projector. This month I had to buy my another computer, a new laptop, because my old one broke down and I need to use them during my lessons. So when we are in a regular school, private as well, but especially public schools, we need to spend the money if we want to have like better lessons and better resources. We need to spend our own money.
Correct. Well, your reports, Alana and Saskia, they meet with what I was telling you. You need to remember that if the school has a projector in every class, the school also needs to have a maintenance department for that equipment, considering the computers too. So sometimes it's not so simple to have this modern equipment in the school because the constant, the frequent use, and you know that sometimes the teacher's not so careful about the material, but the frequent use demands maintenance, demands a person to be fixing the equipment. And this is not so simple because it's expensive. So you see, to have a chalk board, you know, like what Alana just said, right? As a traditional chalkboard, wooden board, is cheaper because you need chalk and sponge to erase the board, to erase what you put on the board. The maintenance is cheaper, but it's not an attractive resource anymore. And all the other disadvantages that we have just discussed, right? So in fact, this little conversation we had has entered the other questions already. For example, this discussion of who should provide the material is an eternal discussion. So who should provide the material? The school, the teacher, or the students? Well, in fact, it doesn't matter, okay? As long as you have the material. So I guess all the three agents of the process, the principal agents, the main agents of the process, can provide this material. The school has to have material and resources. The teacher, because the process, this teaching, and especially the material today, is a very dynamic thing. So the teacher needs to be changing and updating material all the time. If you use the computer, if you have the computer, it's easier, right? And we have discussed some of the disadvantages already, but it's easier. But the fact is that the school needs to have some material, as we will see later on in one of our discussions. The teacher has to prepare, to design his own materials, and the students can do it too. So if you have a project, for example, if we're working with a project, the students can bring material. The students, depending on the situation, they have a cell phone, they have a computer at home, so they can design good material. Or if they don't have these things, they can go and find in newspaper, in magazines. As I told you in the beginning, of course, the world has progressed. Designing material, analyzing material has developed, but the traditional ways still exist, and they valid. So abandon the traditional materials should not be a teacher's choice yet.
Yes, I agree.
Right? So if the school, the teacher, and the students can have a cooperative work on this preparing of materials, the process will be maybe easier, right? But Alana has said something a little already about this. What's the problem, let's put it like this, with this material that we usually prepare? Well, let's take the textbook as an example. As Alana said before, sometimes it's not appropriate for the reality of a certain place. Okay, so we have two definitions when we relate the textbook to the process. It's the idea of authentic material and real material. So we have two words, very, very important. In fact, they are related to any material you prepare. But with the textbook, it's more important. Let's put it like this. It's more emphatic. The idea of authentic material and real material. And this is one of the biggest advantages of the textbook. The material you have there is usually authentic, and it has been adapted already. So you don't need to elaborate, to manipulate on the material of the textbook, because it has been designed for that level of language instruction. So one of the biggest advantages of the textbook is the fact that the material there is authentic. One of the biggest problems also of a textbook is that the material cannot be completely real. It has to be manipulated a little. It has to be adapted a little. Now, what is the point here, and we will come back to this a little later, okay? Maybe next Saturday. But what is the best material to use? Authentic or real?
Professor, I can't say what is the best, but I prefer using authentic materials. But sometimes I have to talk to my students and be honest, because the materials on the book, they are not, sometimes they are not the reality. It's something, as you said, it's manipulated. It's something that someone changed to be on a certain level. So the students had the chance to understand what's happening. So they had to change the wording, they had to change the situation, the dialogue. It's something that in real life, it doesn't exist. So it's something that I have to tell my students, say, hey guys, look, so I know here on your book, everything is so beautiful, but in real life, people don't talk like that. In real life, people don't use this expression. This is something that we use so you can understand what's happening. But in real life, it's not like that. And sometimes I have to bring videos, I have to bring something different, a song, something out of the ordinary, out of the book, so the student can see that in reality, the language is not used only as the grammar point, because the textbooks, they are very focused on grammar, and language is used as art. So people can use it in songs, in poems, in poetry, and is not used only for the grammar purpose.
Right. You want to say something, Alana? Você ia dizer alguma coisa, Alana?
Não, não. Estava escutando a Raíssa.
Tá. Okay, let's use a different example. Let's try to understand this very clearly. Suppose you want to use have you ever used only part of a song Or when you decide to use a song, you need to use all the song? Have you ever met any teacher who, when he decides to use a song, he doesn't play the song completely? He uses only part of the song.
I use the whole song,
Mm-hmm.
but I know some teachers that don't use the whole song when some of the lyrics are inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. So, our conclusion?
Uh, I don't know. So, if a song has inappropriate lyrics and I
Mm-hmm.
cannot use the whole song, I don't use that song. I choose another one, or I don't use any song at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't think that. I think this is personally.
This is
I don't think
personal.
I think it's yeah, it's for me personally, but not that I think that this is the correct way to teach using songs.
Well,
I don't think it's a problem when a teacher doesn't use the whole song. I don't know.
yeah, okay. We are not talking about problem or not problem, correct or incorrect. I'm trying to make you understand the difference between what we say, what we consider a real material and what we consider an authentic material, because the two words are very close to each other. If
Yes.
it's authentic, it's real, right? As a consequence. But when we talk about materials, for example, some most, I don't know if most, but some teachers, they argue that if you don't use the whole song, the students will not understand the message of the song. They will not understand the context of the song. The point here is, why are you using material A, B, or C? What's the purpose of the material? Because you see, designing the material today is sometimes easy, right? If you have the correct instruments, you can make a very beautiful poster, even if you don't have a computer. But if you have scissors, magazine, pictures, okay, glue, you can do a very beautiful poster. If you have color crayons, if you know how to draw, or if you have someone to draw for you, you can do some beautiful things. The point here is, why do you need the material? You should remember we have three phases in a class, in an activity. We have the pre-phase. It's when you present the language and the structures and whatever you need to present. The on phase, when you are really using the material, the book or whatever you decide to use. And the post phase, when the students will try to produce the language more freely. You can use the same material for any or all the three phases. The way you're going to use will be different. But the point here is, why are you using the material? For example, if you are doing a listening activity with a song, it may be a good idea to play all the song, because it's listening, it's audio. The students are listening to language. Now, if you are using the song for reading, for vocabulary, maybe you don't need to use all the lyrics. So what we are saying here is not that you should use only real material or that you should use only authentic material. What we are saying here is that you can use real material if you believe the students have conditions and level to handle the real material. So one of the biggest advantages of the textbook material is that it's ready for you. The material in the textbook has been adapted. So the only thing the teacher needs to do is to complement that material, maybe, to have something more, something plus. So this is one of the biggest advantages of the textbook. But
Professor, I'd like to add something. I think the textbooks now, they are very good. If you compare the first editions and the textbooks that we use now, the design of the textbook is very pleasing. It's very beautiful. You can see many colors and many drawings, and sometimes it's attractive, and sometimes you have parts of a song inside, you have articles, you have pictures, like something simulating a newspaper and something simulating a magazine, a fashion magazine or sports magazine. So I think now the textbook, they are very pleasing. They have evolved a lot, and they are very apart from the first textbooks that were solely based on the book is on the table. The book is on the table. Repeat with me. The book is on the table. So now I think the quality is amazing, but I don't think that you have to use only the textbook, because sometimes the textbook is out of the reality of your student, because the textbook sometimes it's international, it's something that was created abroad, and the reality there is completely different. So sometimes your student, sometimes it's very expensive for the student, because of course it's a piece of art. Some books are a piece of art, and art is expensive. So for the student, it's already expensive to buy the textbook, and it's out of its reality. It's out of his or her reality. So sometimes you have to bring something, to add something that relates to the student.
Correct. I agree with you, Haitham. That's why I said you need to use the textbook, because the material there is primarily on the level of your students, okay? But you need to have something else. You need to have a plus, right? Especially because of variety, and also because the material sometimes there in the textbook is not close to the student's reality. But remember that if the school provides you with a textbook, it's usually maybe the best beginning for a material. Imagine a teacher who has 10 classes a day, 10 different classes a day. The idea would be to have flexible, multi-skill material. But if you have a textbook, it's usually a good beginning. So it may be easier for the teacher to use the textbook material, even if he needs to make some adaptations, as Raissa points. So, what is our conclusion here before I show you some simple things that a teacher can do, and it can be done with any resource? Our conclusion here is any material that you design will give you advantages, but will also bring some disadvantages. Sorry. So, the first aspect to consider here is the skill you are using the material for. The second aspect is, are you using that material for skill developing or for exercise practice? And it gives you all the differences. So let's take fill in the blanks exercises, like when you have a little text, a little passage for the students to complete with words, like verbs or whatever you want to review or to reinforce. That will demand only a print page or a simple document. This is not a skill developing. That is practice, exercise practice. Now, if you want your students, for example, to discuss a project for the city, okay, then you might need different material. So, one, our conclusions. Designing the material today is easy because you have a lot of possibilities. Okay, so it may be a little expensive, but it's easy to design material, to find material which is already designed. It's easy to find videos, it's easy to find songs, you have pictures, okay? You have everything you need is more easily available today. Second, analyzing the material depends on the purpose of why you're using the material, what you're using the material for. Okay? And finally, and this is something you have to think about, is keeping the material. In the computer, okay, you can store the material because you have places in the computer to store the material. If you are using paper material, then you need to be a little bit more careful because it will use up with the time, right? Songs and films change all the time. So what students like today may not be what they will like tomorrow. So keeping the material demands some care from the teacher, from the school, right? The students is not exactly our responsibility, but keeping material is not so easy. A file of material, okay, is not an easy thing to do. For example, the school needs to have cabinets. The school needs to have places to keep the material and to keep the material in good conditions, right? For example, you are in a, as Alana pointed a little before, you teach in a regular city school in Belém. At this time, like January, February, March, and April, but this is more intense, but it's all the year. We have a lot of rain in Belém. And if there is a dripping, right, in the classroom or in the class where the material is kept, right, and it happens overnight when there's nobody in the school, if the material is paper made, that dripping of water may destroy the material overnight. So we have these three things to worry about. One, when you're designing the material, okay, you need to think of why you're going to use the material. Where, in what phase of your teaching. Second, keeping the material safe for long use, right? And third, evaluating how you can update that material in the future. Imagine if you have a poster, a cardboard poster, where you have placed or glued or sticked some pictures. Next week, you find more beautiful pictures. You cannot stick on the top of those pictures you already glued before. You need to have a different poster. Then poster, more poster, more poster. It's not so simple as I'm telling you. So designing is easy, but evaluating and updating the material is not so simple. So I believe that it's much more important for a teacher to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of a certain material than designing material all the time. You know, morning, afternoon, and night, the teacher is working on designing materials. As I will show you in a minute, there are very simple things that we can do and which is still valid, still possible to use. Would you like to say something else or ask, or can I close this page?
I would like to say something. I recently started working in a new school, and it's a regular school. It's not a language school. So we are trying to develop a sense of, I think nowadays every school wants to have a bilingual program. And usually it's not every school has really like an actual bilingual program. But we are trying to develop something where the students can have maximum exposure to English. So, and I'm completely on my own here because the publisher's material, haven't arrived yet. I don't know if they will arrive. I don't know when they will arrive. So I really need to teach every day. I cannot rely on the publisher's material to come. And the publisher's material looks like it's very good because they have a lot of flashcards, they have a lot of posters, but I don't have it right now. So I had to make my own.
Right.
And then I totally agree that we don't need to create new material
Every day.
every time for every group and for every lesson. This is exhausting, and there are a lot of teachers that make their materials available for us for free legally in a lot of websites. And I think like the teachers, English language teachers, have a big community, and this is amazing. So I could see some printables that I used. I have a favorite website. It's Mr. Printables. I love these websites because I think that the illustrations are very attractive for all ages. They are not very childish. They can be used with teenagers, but they are also like ludic. Uh, they are not very grown up, so kids enjoy them as well. So I had to print. I had just had to print. Hopefully now, I only have to wait for like a couple of months before the publisher's material arrived to the school. But I liked it very much that we could see a lot of things online for free that I could use.
Right.
So there's just a little problem of having to print it out and having to laminate because it's paper material, so I need to laminate it all. But I think that we could get in touch with the teachers community because there are a lot of great things that we can use for free and legally, and websites for teachers and groups for teachers and etc.
Yeah. And also today you have arcades. Arcades are those electronic areas where the editors and teachers share the materials they have designed and that they have experienced with, and it has worked somehow. And that is another situation concerning material. Teachers, when they design their own material, and when it's not provided by the school, for example, teachers are usually very jealous and selfish. They don't like to share the material. They don't like to lend the material. And, you know, it has a point there because, as I told you, one of the problems with material is keeping it, you know, like preserving the quality and the resistance of the material, right? And it was your money. When it's school money, it's a little different. But when it's your money, then the problems start. So today you have sites, you have arcades from publishers and teachers, okay, with materials you can share. But you see, I'm gonna show you now 2 pages, and one of the problems today with designing material is that teachers have become too much dependent on technology. Of course, we have to use the technology if it's available and it's there for us, right? We have wonderful technology today to use as material, as resources. But most teachers today, they have forgotten somehow that traditional way of designing material. They have become too much dependent on technology. And you need to remember that teachers, one of the most important qualities in a teacher is to have an ace up your sleeve. What if technology is not working on a certain class? What if the energy goes off? What if there's no internet? What if there's a problem with the technology? What is plan B?
I'm getting nervous.
Alana,
Oi,
você falou alguma coisa?
It was me. It was
foi
me.
a Raíssa.
I
Raíssa.
said I was getting nervous.
Why?
Yeah, because when you said, what if the computer is not working? What if there is a power outage? And what if, and I saw myself in all those situations. And
It has happened to you.
yeah, of course, of course.
Uh-huh.
I had to do something in the dark. I had to I think it was a test. I was in the middle of an oral test. I was talking to the student and there was a power outage, and we had to continue the test using the lantern of our phones. And I used my phone, she used her phone, and we were doing everything in the dark. So it's hard.
Yeah. Well, thanks God, today we have a flashlight, a lantern in the cell phone. It's not a candle anymore. You know, everything has a silver lining, as we say in the popular sentence, right? In the popular cliche. But it brings us to the final point, okay, which is not there in the questions, but we need to think about it. Another very important material and another very important resource is the teacher himself, right? Mimics, gestures, speech. The teacher, right, is a live material. Some teachers are a little shy in that aspect. But the teacher is a live material, is a live model. You can teach, for example, fashion. You can teach hairstyle. You can teach colors using yourself as a material. You can teach music styles if you are a reasonable dancer. So you are one example of a real material. Correct? Vocês todos concordam com essas discussões e com essas colocações que nós estamos fazendo aqui?
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely agree that when everything goes wrong, when the power goes off, when the internet's not working, when like now that we are having like online teaching and like regular teaching in the same group at the same time, like when the connection goes off and when the students cannot see me, it's really difficult. But as teachers, like, we are very fast thinkers and we can adapt very quickly using like what we have, using a pen that we have in front of us, and using like the outfits that we are wearing or what the students are wearing, and then we need to go on because we know that we cannot stop our lesson. And so we need to go on finding a way.
Right. Very good. Okay, now let's go to our second point today. I'm gonna show you two things, okay? And I want you to think about, I'm gonna show you one and then I'll show you the other, and we will talk about the first and then the second. And I want you to think like, is it easy to prepare? Is it useful to use? Okay. Can you use that for different stages of the lesson? Okay, what you can do with that? This is what I want you to tell me, right? And that will be like the conclusion of our class today. Okay, so I'm gonna close this now. Okay, now I can see you in full screen. Okay, so let's go to the first one, okay? Okay, first this one. Can you see the page? Yeah? Good. Okay, so remember, the questions I asked, is it simple? Yeah, very simple, isn't it? Can I do this in the blackboard? Can I do this in any board?
Yeah.
I don't need the computer, technology, nothing. I just need
The board.
a clean board, right? A board and something to write on the board, of course. I can even bring that from home, like a poster, because it's very simple, as you can see. Very good. What can I use that for? In your opinion?
To teach grammar, to talk about, to convey for the students the relation that this verb tense has to the time, has in relation to the time. Because sometimes the students, they don't understand, they can understand the structure because the structure is something that basically they memorize, but they don't understand why you have to use this verb tense. So if you show that it's something related to when the action started, when the action will end, or when you talk about the period of time when this action happens, they understand that it's something logical.
Correct. Do you consider that, how can we call that? Of course, that this is a poster, okay? But what you have in the poster, what do you call
Timeline?
it? A timeline, but is that a picture? Is that a photo? Is that what? How do you call it? That is a
graph.
A graph?
that, no, not a graph. That is a diagram.
Okay.
Okay, that is a diagram. Graph usually implies two axes. Okay. Okay, fine. So this is a diagram. I can do this diagram, as you can see there, in black, but I can do it in color as well. do I need any special ability or any special talent to make this diagram? It's easy, isn't it?
No,
Very simple.
I think even the students could do this
Right.
diagram.
Right. One of the most important things we can teach with this diagram is the idea of verb tenses, especially the present perfect. Why? Do you consider this diagram practical? Can you give me an example? In what way? Okay, let's suppose I'm teaching verb tenses. In what way is this practical?
Because you don't need, you don't rely on many resources to apply this diagram. You just need the board and you need something to write with. That's
Okay.
all.
What else? That is something more important there. If you have a diagram like this, okay, if it's exactly like the one I'm showing in black ink, you can have color markers and crayons to write on it. This is a blackboard. This is a board. You can stick little paper strips in different parts of this diagram. You can stick and unstick, write and erase. You can even do this on the board. Now, tell me, to design something like this, do you need expensive material? Do you need special technology? Do you need expensive equipment, like expensive complements? No. This is a very traditional diagram. That is a very traditional material. A very simple white poster, which can be paper, board, whatever you decide to use, even a projector. You can do this on the PowerPoint. And you can do thousands of things with that. You can teach the idea of verb tenses, the relation of one verb tense with the other. You can teach adverbs, right? You can teach actions, right? You can teach, action verbs. You can teach thousands of things using that. And this is such a simple thing to do. So as I told you before, sometimes the teachers have forgotten that some simple things can be real and authentic at the same time. I'm not saying that you should not use the other things, just the contrary, okay? You have to use the other things, the other more complex and more advanced things. But there are some very simple things that you can still use and do without much trouble or difficulty. Very good. The other question. This can be used with any level? Yes.
No, I don't think so.
No?
No, because when we are teaching, for instance, young learners, I don't think we can use this with young learners, but up to teenagers, I guess it's okay.
Why you don't think you can use that with young learners?
Because like when I teach young learners, we focus on language acquiring. So I teach in English.
Mm-hmm.
Like I cannot speak Portuguese with my students, with my young learners.
Mm-hmm.
And we go on like realia.
Realia. Mm-hmm.
So I don't we don't even have written material for young learners where I work.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we can use with
Yeah,
them.
so what you're talking about here is not the possibility of using with young learners. You are saying that for the purpose of the teaching that you do in your school, written material is not the moment yet, right? But
Yes, that's it.
yeah, okay, but you can prepare different diagram. Okay, you can have pictures here instead of words, simple pictures,
Yes, totally.
or what we call stick figures.
Yes.
What phase of a lesson can you use this for? Presentation, during or post? Pre, on or post?
For me, pre.
Pre.
I guess, yes, I guess pre, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it's something very, very primary, let's say, like very simple diagram. In fact, you can use that for any phase of your lesson. More frequently for presentation of structures or vocabulary. But you can use this for the post, for example. You can give the students the situation, right? And then you can tell them to discuss the situation as if they were living today or 5 years ago and see the differences. Example, you're talking about marriage customs, size of a family, who is the head of the family today, maybe more women than men. Some years ago, men more than women. So this is what I'm trying to say is, what I'm asking you is, do you think that this is a flexible material to use? Vocês acham que esse material aí ele tem flexibilidade?
I think, Professor, I think that when we are teaching, like I started teaching for very young learners, and then as the years went by, I started teaching other levels and different ages, a different age span. So we start thinking how we can adapt our material so they can be the most universal as they can be, because we cannot keep preparing different things for the
All the
same
time.
all the time for the same content. So we try to search for materials that are flexible and that we can use with different groups, like pictures, flashcards with pictures, diagrams. When you have big posters in the classroom teaching classroom language, we can use them with adults because they always want to speak Portuguese. They don't want to ask questions in English. They feel that they can do it, but they feel that like they can't do it. So I think that we search for flexible materials, and I think a diagram is a good example of this. Just
Right.
as pictures are perfect. I think English is a very visual subject, so we need to rely on a lot of pictures, and we even our when we have a lesson that's focused on speaking, we still need to have the boards for the visual students. We need to have a lot of pictures. Maybe we need to have, for some groups or for some levels, we need to have like a script of what they have to say and adapt. So I think this is one of the universal materials, the ones that are
Right.
very flexible and that we can use with a lot of groups.
Correct. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I'll show you another image now. And when we finish talking about the second image, I have a final question to ask you, okay? And we will finish for today. So let me close this now. Okay. Here. Wait a minute. Okay. Here we go. Can you see a little? Let me try to make this bigger. I can't make this much bigger.
I think it's okay. It's okay like that.
Yeah? Okay, so let me try to adjust a little. Okay, so this is another kind of material, okay, that you can do. It's what we call chart, okay? When you have a group of images. And as you can see, this is possible with pictures or even with drawing if you have someone who is skillful in drawing. But again, we can use this for many different purposes, different phases of the lesson, and also for different levels. So what is the important thing when we think of designing material? We need to think about how much we can use it, why we can use it, like what different levels or phases of a lesson we can use, and the problems to keep the material and to update this material. These three principles are the basis of designing class material. Number one, what we are using the material for. So if we have variety of uses, if we can use with different phases and levels, if we can make this easily, or if we're gonna take a lot of time and trouble to make it. And three, how to keep the material for a longer time. And you can see here that you can teach vocabulary, you can teach actions, right? you know, and it's very simple. These images are easy to find. Fruit, okay? Objects, actions like stick figures. That's what we call these figures, okay? Stick figures, because they don't have a full body. They're just lines. They're easy to prepare. Okay. Before we go ahead to our final discussion, there is one thing I want to ask you. How many students do you teach? Like, what's the average number of students you have in a regular school class?
In a group or?
In a regular school class, in one class, how many students in average?
In a language school, I usually have around 15 students.
Mm-hmm.
But like when at regular schools, around 30.
Mm-hmm. Alana, how many students do you have in your classes? How many students in your classes? Quantos alunos você tem numa sala?
Estava falhando aqui a minha internet. Quantos alunos? Varia, geralmente, em média, 35, 38.
Certo, 40.
Por aí.
Em média, 40 alunos. Raíssa?
Isso.
A Raíssa é a mais sortuda de todos.
True. It's true.
How many do you
Because
have, Raíssa? Usually.
3 to 5
Okay.
maximum.
Right. Okay. That brings my next question to you. The number of copies you need for your material. If you're using the material for presentation, you can show that to all the class. Okay, and then you have to have a good size, because the people sitting on the back, they need to see the material clearly. You have other problems, that's what I'm saying, but you can have just one. Now, if you're going to use the material for the other phases of the activity, 5 copies are not so hard to do, but 40 copies will be really painful, right? In all aspects, to carry, to keep, right? To pay. So this is another aspect you should think about, né, Alana?
E é muito complicado, nossa senhora. Praticamente a gente tem que, eu falo por mim e alguns outros colegas, milagre, e a gente acaba tendo que, por exemplo, eu tive que ao longo dos anos me munir de recursos, computador, impressora, como eu disse, né, a questão do meu projetor, do data show, porque começou a chegar uma situação de começar a funilar muita coisa, e é como se o trabalho começasse a ficar inerte. Então, assim, eu acabei comprando uma impressora porque eu estou numa turma com, vamos supor, 30 alunos, no mínimo, 20 tem material, e os outros 10 não. Então, eu já acabava formulando meus materiais, tirando cópias excedentes, já contando com os meus alunos que não iam adquirir. Certo. Porque, para mim, assim, estar em sala de aula e ver metade interagir, outra parte não, por falta de material, e aí a gente já toca uma outra questão, porque isso eu estou falando trabalhando numa escola de um grande porte, como eu estou, tem a questão da xerocadora lá, deixa o material, o aluno vai lá, xeroca e tira. Aí a gente toca naquela questão do financeiro, porque às vezes o aluno não tem como adquirir, então aí você já vai munido desse material para compensar aquele aluno, aquilo já gera um custo para você enquanto professor, porque você acaba, de certa forma, às vezes, quando o aluno vê que você faz isso, ele acaba não querendo mais ter a responsabilidade de adquirir o material dele. Então, aquilo começa a gerar uma série de coisas em cadeia que você não sabe
Problemas
como que é
adicionais.
vício. Aí vira um vício, você não sabe como terminar esse vício, aí vira uma bola de neve.
Sem contar que os outros alunos podem também dizer, não, professora, mas se a senhora está dando para ele, tem que dar para mim também, independente do resto.
Às vezes a gente é um pouco mais enérgica, já teve questão, tipo assim, da aula ir embora, fluir, e o aluno acabar ficando, porque é complicado quando você vê 5, 6, 7 alunos, não tem o material, mas você sabe que não comprou, às vezes porque não quis. Então, se você vai lá e disponibiliza para ele, da próxima vez o outro que comprou não vai querer. Então, é uma série de questões.
É isso. Então, assim, olha só. Se você estiver usando, por exemplo, um data show para fazer uma projeção de um flashcard, né, de uma figura, de uma imagem, um dos problemas com isso é que você não pode ter muitas imagens, né, muitos flashcards ao mesmo tempo, porque eles começam a ficar menores, né, de tamanho. Aí, se você tenta ampliar, distorce, não dá para colocar todos na mesma tela, tem que mostrar um por um. E aí, às vezes, você quer que um grupo olhe para uma figura, o outro grupo olhe para outra figura, né? E assim sucessivamente, para que você tenha atividades individuais em cada grupo, ou para cada aluno. Então, isso é um problema, né? Isso é um handicap, uma desvantagem, por exemplo, da projeção, que você talvez não tivesse, né, com os paper cards, porque aí você poderia fazer um para cada grupo. Então, uma das soluções aí, né, uma das possibilidades seria numa sala with many students, né, like 40 alunos, como a Alana tem, ou, sei lá, 30 e tantos, como a Saskia às vezes tem. Uma das possibilidades é você formar grupos, certo? E aí você pode individualizar esse material, certo? Então, o que eu quero que vocês compreendam, tá? É que nós estamos aqui discutindo como é mais fácil, ou como pode ficar mais fácil você preparar e usar o material. Existem alternativas tradicionais que nós não devemos esquecer. Então é aquela coisa, né? Vocês com certeza já ouviram falar na pessoa que vai para o analista, né? Que vai para o terapeuta, porque porque sofre de uma fobia, de uma mania, de uma ideia fixa com o celular, né? Então é aquela pessoa que acorda, dorme, passa o dia inteiro com o celular, e se você tira o celular dele, ele entra em crise psicótica. Tem que ir para o analista, porque ele é um escravo da tecnologia. O professor, ele não pode ser esse escravo. Certo? Então, isso é uma das coisas que precisam ficar bem claras para nós, tá? Claro que se nós estivermos passando por um momento muito especial, como é o caso hoje, né? Que você precisa dessa tecnologia para fazer a sua prática, é uma coisa. Mas daqui a pouco, isso vai acabar e nós vamos voltar lá para a nossa sala de aula. Face to face, hand in hand, cheek to cheek, como diz a música, né? Dancing cheek to cheek com seus alunos. Então, a gente não pode esquecer disso. Muito bem. Então, vamos à nossa última pergunta, que eu quero que vocês me respondam com honestidade, hein? Com sinceridade, certo? Sem tendências preconceituosas ou discriminatórias, já que vocês três são do mesmo sexo, né? Vocês se assustaram agora, não foi? Okay. What is better to have? A class with most female students or a class with most male students? What is better to have? Oh, pay attention. We are thinking about material design. We are thinking about material. So you don't need to go into other aspects of the question. The focus of the question is material design. What is better to teach? A group with most girls or a group with most boys?
I don't know. I don't think it's
It's the same.
I think it's the same. Yes, I think it's the same.
Well,
Material wise.
the ideal group in other aspects would be half and half. But that's not an alternative, okay? Our question has only two possibilities. A, most girls. B, most boys. In addition to the board, okay, in addition to the board, which we have agreed it's the most frequently used material, what is the other? Yes, Saskia.
Oh, okay. So thinking about how in general there is the idea that girls are better at multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's better to have a classroom with most girls because they are able to adapt faster with us.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we don't have enough material for everyone, they can look at it as a group.
Mm-hmm.
Quicker than a group of boys, maybe. I don't
Right.
know.
Any other opinions? Remember something that Saskia mentioned a little earlier in our discussions. She mentioned the word realia. Do you remember that? Realia, realia. Realia is real material. One of the most wonderful and fantastic alternatives you have for material design is to have real objects with you in your class. To teach vocabulary, okay? To practice pronunciation, real objects, especially with children, with kids, with young learners, because they like to touch, they like to see, right? They like to toss things around. They like to play, and having real objects is very good. You have some already in the class, right? Like desk, table, chair, marker, you can show, right? But is again, we have to rely on statistics. There has been a study made by a British university, and the conclusion was that a class with more girls than boys usually and frequently can provide more realia for a teacher. What do you
Because
think?
they more things in their backpacks and in their purses. That's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
I have students, like I have boy students that go to class with only what they were wearing, and they don't take the book, they don't even bring pencils and erasers, because I have it, I always have it. So they feel like, oh, the teacher is going to give me anyway, so I don't need to prepare at all to go to class.
You open up a woman's bag, you open up a girl's purse, and you can find a universe inside it. Of course, we have a problem there, because some people, right, and that may be girls or boys, but some people don't like to have the objects they use or they bring to class exposed. So you must be a little careful there. So if you have your objects, if you can use the objects that you yourself have, is usually better than having to use the student's material. But the statistics have proved that girls usually have more material if you consider number, and more important than number is the quality of the material the girls usually have, because we know that women are much more careful with the objects they have than men. E vocês sabem disso, né? Fala, Lana.
Eu não sei se acontece muito com as meninas, né? Porque a Saskia disse que tem um número maior de alunos, trabalha em turma regular também. Mas a participação feminina em sala de aula é muito maior. Pelo menos comigo, sim. E ali a gente tem que quebrar N barreiras de preconceito no público masculino. É um jeito de falar, é a forma que você tem que pronunciar, porque aí começa aquelas ideias pejorativas na cabeça dele que a gente tem que desconstruir algumas coisas. Porque tem que rolar demais a língua, porque ser um jeito. Algumas expressões acabando sendo usadas em sala, né, que alguns homens adoram dizer. Isso é uma questão cultural também, de criação, enfim. Isso é um jeito muito de viado, professor. Isso não é jeito de homem falar, isso, aquilo, né? Então, é complicado porque na turma da gente, pelo menos nas minhas turmas, são turmas muito heterogêneas, de todas, diversas, em todos os sentidos. Então, às vezes acaba criando um desconforto enorme dentro da sala de aula, em determinadas situações. Então, tem que ter um jogo de cintura aqui, outro acolá. Mas as meninas são muito mais participativas, recebem melhor as propostas de atividade, interagem mais. A aula flui muito melhor, assim, em detrimento daquilo que elas se propõem a aprender e a participar.
Vejam bem.
Não há um público masculino. Mas isso aí vai divergir de uma turma para outra.
Certo. Nós estamos falando aqui em média, né? Porque quando a gente diz as estatísticas, isso significa média, né? Claro que as exceções vão existir sempre. Sim. Mas foi por isso que antes de eu fazer a pergunta, eu disse a vocês, thinking about material design. Certo? Por quê? Porque outros aspectos, tá, serão complicados. Vocês querem ver uma coisa? A Alana acabou de dizer ali, é muito mais fácil trabalhar com uma turma com mais garotas, porque elas são mais participativas, assim, assado. Mas ela é uma professora mulher. Às vezes, quando é um professor, um homem, a coisa inverte, né? As figuras se invertem. Sim. Certo? Então, existe todo um psicológico, é isso que eu quero dizer. Existe todo um psicológico, né, em volta dessa discussão. Por isso que eu disse antes, não vai dar para a gente conversar sobre isso aqui, tá? Talvez num outro momento. Mas, quando a gente considera o cuidado com o livro-texto, o cuidado com o material, né? A variedade de coisas de coisas, de objetos reais, né? De realia, que a pessoa tá, ou traz, ou tem. Neste aspecto, uma sala de aula com mais meninas do que meninos, quando eu digo mais, não quer dizer 80% contra 20%. Não, basta uma maioria simples, tá? Por quê? Primeiro porque se costuma dizer que a bolsa da mulher, né, é um lago cheio de peixes de diferentes espécies. E segundo, porque as meninas, né, têm mais cuidado com o material. Então, quando você pega o material de uma menina, da bolsa de uma menina ou da mochila de uma menina para mostrar, ele normalmente está em melhores condições de visualização, né, de entendimento, do que quando você puxa o mesmo material lá da mochila do garoto. Aí é aquela história, né? Olha, professor, olha como está o caderno dele, está todo espocado, está todo arrebentado, não tem nem cuidado com o material, nem pensa no dinheiro que o pai gasta. Aí começa uma série de outros aspectos, né, que a gente tem que fazer, que é a nossa class management, quer dizer, a gente tem que resolver ali, naquele momento, certo? A gente tem que tomar a nossa atitude ali naquele instante em que o problema ocorreu. Então, pensando em realia, this is another alternative and possibility that a teacher has. Então, pô, o cara ensina das 7 da manhã às 11 da noite, sem parar. Não dá tempo dele respirar, não dá tempo dele preparar material, não dá tempo dele olhar o que ele já tem feito ali, não dá tempo dele nem escolher, não dá tempo nem dele ir ao banheiro. Uma possibilidade é você usar objetos reais, aqueles objetos, aquelas coisas, né, que estão dentro da sua sala de aula. Aí você vai precisar, claro, ter essa empatia, né, de pedir ao aluno que te empreste um material, fazer aquele joguinho, né? Olha, um chocolate, lá vai. Quem tem aí um termômetro para medir temperatura? Aí sempre aparece uma menina e diz, professor, tá aqui, olha, eu tenho, porque eu ontem estava com febre, a mamãe botou na minha bolsa. Toma um chocolate. Então aí você vai fazendo o seu lúdico, né? Você vai fazendo o seu show, vamos dizer assim, ao mesmo tempo em que você vai ensinando vocabulário, pronúncia, né? Com esse cuidado de give the people the right to pass. Não, professora, minha mãe não gosta que ninguém pegue nas minhas coisas. Ok, no problem. That's fine. Let's try someone else. Mas, por exemplo, o joguinho, né, de quem tem tal coisa, como se diz isso? Qual é a pronúncia disso? Como é que se escreve? Quem quer ir lá no quadro escrever? This is something that works with any age. Porque não pensem que é só a criança que gosta de ir no quadro escrever, que gosta de se movimentar, né? O adolescente também gosta de uma baguncinha de vez em quando, né? A gente sabe disso. Se o professor puder controlar essa baguncinha, tá tudo certo, né? Ninguém quer bonecos de cera na sala de aula, correto? Bom, gente, então, ó, hoje a ideia da nossa discussão era a gente definir o que a gente tem de material, né? Quais são as possibilidades que nós temos, qual é a dificuldade, né? Vamos dizer assim, as vantagens e as desvantagens de um determinado material, de outro determinado material, tá? Vamos dizer assim, fazer uma discussão um pouco mais prática, dessa coisa de design and analyzing material. No próximo sábado, nós vamos ter uma aula um pouco mais teorizada, tá? Então, a gente vai trabalhar com uma discussão um pouco mais em cima de princípios, tá? Em cima de coisas específicas, tá? Eu optei lá no material que eu coloquei na plataforma para vocês, eu optei por colocar um material genérico, certo? Sobre design and material, que é o material dessa primeira semana. E lá na segunda semana, eu optei por discutir e trabalhar um pouco com o textbook. Por quê? Porque, primeiro, nós íamos trabalhar essa outra parte aqui na nossa videoaula. E segundo, normalmente o textbook é o que os professores mais facilmente têm acesso. Seja ele do próprio professor, seja da escola, normalmente, especialmente in a language class, né? A gente tem esse material mais primário, vamos dizer assim, que é o textbook. E que eu confesso a vocês que eu acho o textbook maravilhoso, tá? Em todos os aspectos, tá? Ao fazer as adaptações, ao usar como a Raíssa disse ainda há pouco, hoje, os livros-texto, eles são muito diferentes dos livros-textos de alguns anos atrás. Até porque nós estamos vivendo na communicative era. Nós estamos vivendo na era da comunicação, no desenvolvimento das habilidades, né, daquela coisa dos PCNs que a gente já falou aqui. Então, os autores e as editoras, é por isso que o livro-texto às vezes é muito caro, porque os recursos que são utilizados nele, ou com ele, ou para ele, ou nele, precisam ser muito diversificados. Além do externo, né? Quer dizer, aquela coisa do site, das arcades, etc., né? Dos CD-ROMs, dos vídeos interativos e tudo mais. Certo? Então, eu acho o livro-texto, vamos dizer assim, para dar o starting point in the material analysis, fantastic. Então, toda vez que eu tenho alguma dificuldade, meu primeiro pensamento é no livro-texto. Deixa eu ver o que é que tem no livro-texto. Deixa eu ver o que é que eu posso fazer com isso. Tá? Então, de repente, eu escaneio uma coisa lá do livro-texto de não sei quantos milhões de anos atrás, que eu pesco aqui na minha biblioteca. Olha, essa figura serve perfeitamente. Aí eu tiro o texto, certo? Escaneio a figura, mando fazer um banner, certo? Ou então eu faço um PowerPoint com aquele escaneamento, aí eu coloco um movimento, aquela coisa lá do PowerPoint, né? Ou eu vou atrás do Prezi, se eu puder pagar, né? Enfim, meu primeiro pensamento, é claro, vamos dizer, o pensamento zero é o que eu tenho na sala de aula. Então, no quadro, eu posso fazer isso no quadro? Tá, então, é resolvido. Será que eu vou encontrar esse material, esse objeto na sala? Resolvido. Tá? Mas, se não, o pensamento 1 é no livro-texto. Porque ele já é adaptado, ele já está pronto para aquela situação, para aquele nível de linguagem. Então, o meu trabalho, vamos dizer, vai ser apenas, talvez, dar um pouco mais de criatividade ao material, que eu posso fazer com as minhas dinâmicas, né? Que eu posso fazer lá com meus learning styles, enfim. Mas o livro-texto é o primeiro pensamento. Certo, Fox? Alguém quer perguntar alguma coisa, ou alguém quer comentar mais alguma coisa? Pode ativar o seu microfone, Sasha.
Professor, eu quero perguntar sobre a tarefa da semana.
Sim.
A tarefa da semana é que a gente precisa escolher uma das four skills, né? Só
Sim.
uma.
Só
e aí
uma.
a gente cria um material para ser usado nessa aula e a gente vai especificar um material para pre, on and post.
Se você
Então, no
achar...
caso, seriam 3 materiais ou é um material?
Lembra do que nós falamos ainda há pouco. Você pode usar o mesmo material para todas as fases da aula, tá?
E aí a gente escreve para descrever, né? Como a gente utilizaria aquele material em sala.
Qual seria o material e como você usaria esse material para aquela atividade que você está pensando, tá?
Tá, a gente tem...
Pode falar.
Número de laudas?
Não.
Não?
Você tem que ter cuidado só com o limite da plataforma, tá? E, se eu não me engano, são 2 megas, eu acho. Tá lá escrito, quando você abre a atividade, tem lá escrito o limite que a plataforma permite de postagem. Porque, por exemplo, se você for mostrar uma imagem, se você quiser colocar uma imagem lá no seu texto, tá? Então você pensou em usar um flashcard, um diagram. Se você quiser colocar a imagem lá, é sempre melhor você salvar isso tudo em PDF antes de postar, porque fica menor, tá? Mas esse é o único cuidado que você precisa ter. Além do que, vocês devem lembrar que você sempre dá o pontapé inicial com uma skill. Então, vamos dizer, você escolheu listening ou reading, uma delas que é o início da atividade. Então, aquela coisa que aparece lá no seu livro-texto é listening. Então, você tem que começar a sua aula com o listening. Aí você vai ter a pré e a on com o listening. Mas quando você chegar lá na post, você pode ter aquela ideia das multi-skills. Você pode trabalhar com, além do listening, né, que você já vem trabalhando nas fases da aula, você pode trabalhar com outras skills. Speaking, writing, por exemplo, tá? Então, vocês precisam só ter esse cuidado, porque quando eu disse escolha uma skill, tá? É para você poder dar o seu starting point. Então, a sua pré e a sua on são com aquela skill, tá? Mas quando você vai para post, aí você pode usar outras skills na sua atividade. Mas o material pode ser o mesmo, tá? Usado de maneira diferente em cada pedaço da atividade.
Ok. É o texto em inglês, professor?
You decide, up to you.
Ok.
It can be English, Portuguese, Japanese, Chinese.
Ok. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. You choose. You decide. Diga, Lana.
Professor, porque o sinal caiu aqui, eu não ouvi o início da sua explicação a respeito do trabalho.
Ela está perguntando sobre o trabalho, tá? Dessa semana. Então, eu estou pedindo lá que vocês escolham uma das skills, o listening, o reading, o writing, o speaking, e aí vocês criem um material, tá? Para trabalhar com aquela atividade, para aquela skill. Certo?
Uhum.
Então, por exemplo, se você pensar num desenho, numa imagem, numa figura, você pode mostrar isso lá no seu texto, certo? Eu quero só que você diga o que você vai fazer com aquele material. Então, por exemplo, você escolheu listening, tá?
Sim.
Então, listening, a gente pensa logo numa música, num diálogo, num filme, certo?
Uhum.
Então, você não vai botar o filme lá na sua atividade, mas você vai mencionar qual é o filme que você estaria usando, certo? Se você usaria só um trailer, se era um filme todo, e vai explicar por quê, certo? Naquela fase, né? Na pré, na on, na post. E você pode, por exemplo, usar o filme ou aquele trecho do filme, as 3 fases da aula, tanto na pré, quanto na on, quanto na
Sim.
post, certo? Cuidado, hein?
Ok.
Lembrem-se, porque nós já falamos sobre isso, tá? Mas nós vamos voltar a falar na próxima aula, por causa do textbook. Se você está dizendo que é listening, é listening. O que é que significa isso? Que quando você mostrar esse material para o seu aluno a primeira vez, ele não pode estar lendo nada. Ele estará só ouvindo. Então, na fase pré, você pode, por exemplo, tocar uma música 2 vezes, mas não tem a letra da música para o aluno ver. Ele estará só ouvindo. Lembrem que a gente já conversou sobre isso. Não é possível, apesar de que as mulheres, como diz a Saskia, são multitasking, né? São multitarefa, não é possível para o ser humano ouvir e ler ao mesmo tempo. Tá? Nós sabemos que o seu olho é mais rápido do que o seu ouvido. Então é por isso que quando se vai assistir um filme, ou você coloca a legenda em inglês, tá? E mesmo assim há problema, porque você vai ler em vez de ouvir, tá? Ou você tira a legenda e só ouve. Pelo menos a primeira vez. Senão, não é listening. Aí depois que você passou da fase pré, que você vai para on, aí você entrega o material escrito para o seu aluno. Aí ele vai seguir o áudio, seja lá o que for, com o material na mão. Mas na primeira e na segunda vez, se é listening, é listening. Então vocês só precisam ter um pouco de cuidado com isso na hora que vocês estiverem descrevendo lá aquilo que vocês estão fazendo com o material, tá? Mas lembrem, o foco da tarefa é o material, tá? Então, se vocês escolhem um reading, tem que ter um texto para ser reading, senão não é reading, certo? Aí vocês podem até dizer, utilizando o texto que o livro-texto traz, que é o texto fulano de tal, tá? Mas vocês vão ter que, de alguma maneira, me mostrar que vocês estão casando o material apropriado com a skill que vocês estão trabalhando nesse starting point. Entenderam?
Professor,
Oi.
esse material vai ter que ficar tipo na forma como se fosse um apostilado, é isso? Ou eu quero saber em termos da estrutura dele.
Não,
Estrutura.
você pode só citar. Então, por exemplo, você vai usar um filme, você diz lá qual é o nome do filme. E aí você diz se você vai usar o filme todo, se é só uma parte, porque o objetivo é esse ou aquele. Se você
Vai
vai
ficar
usar
mais o descritivo, e descrever se
justamente.
é
O
isso.
que se você pode mostrar se você vai usar um pôster, por exemplo. Aí você tem a imagem, você mostra lá como seria, igual eu mostrei aqueles diagramas aqui para
Sim.
vocês. Entendeu? Aí você pode dizer, olha, eu mesmo vou desenhar, ou eu vou pegar essa imagem lá na internet,
Sim.
tá?
Tá, ok.
E aí lembrem, tá, gente? Vocês têm uma tarefa, certo? Com um prazo de tempo para postar, e na semana que vem já tem outra, certo? Então vocês tomem cuidado com esse limite de postagem, com esse prazo de postagem, tá bom?
Qual é o
Pra-
prazo que eu não...
Se não me falha a memória, Alana, é domingo. É amanhã. Para
Esse
essa
domingo?
primeira. Para essa primeira. Tá? E aí depois já começa outro material para vocês
Não,
fazerem.
professor, não é
Não?
não, professor. É
Quando é?
sexta-feira,
Então
até
pronto.
sexta-feira.
Ixi, melhorou então. Ficou melhor
Ah, tá.
ainda. Mas olha, Alana, me parece mais fácil para ti fazer isso no fim de semana do que durante a semana.
Não, sim, é por isso que eu tô já preocupada.
Pois normalmente eu dou um pouco mais de tempo, tá? Mas é que eu pensei que dessa vez eu tinha sido um pouco mais carrasco com vocês. Que bom que eu não fui. Mais alguma dúvida, então, gente? Tudo certo? Tudo bem claro, então? Tá. Então, see you next Saturday. Remember, in the afternoon, I'll be on the chat, okay? My suggestion, use the Saturday afternoon period to do your task, to prepare the exercise. My suggestion. Okay, but it's only a suggestion. But anyway, I will be on the chat in case you need to talk to me. Or, if you prefer, you can do this through the group in the WA. Okay? Thank you very much for coming to
Thank
our
you.
class today. Have a nice
Thank
lunch.
you. Thank you, Professor.
Enjoy your weekend. And see you
Bye.
next Saturday.
See
See
you.
you.
See you.
Bye.
Yay, remember, as soon as I convert the video, I'll make it available in the platform.
Okay.
For you.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
See you.